Sunday Golds, Arya Masudi, and Brett Nevitt. It is Wednesday, September the 24th, and we're back after a little bit of a hiatus and some life changes for myself and for Brett. A lot to get to on this podcast episode. If you're looking at us, that's one of the changes we're talking about. You can now watch Sunday Golds in video format in addition to podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, and everywhere else you get your favorite pods. I think you know what we look like, but in case you didn't, this is me and Brett. Brett, hello. I know there's a lot to get to. This fall has certainly been a lot of fun in Tallahassee with the way the football team is playing. I know you've also embarked on a new journey down to South Florida. So congratulations on that, man. Give you a chance to fill in the fans on what's going on in Brett Nevitt's world.
Yeah, things will be a little different for me moving forward. I moved down to Tallahassee after being there for the last 7 years since I went to school in the summer of 2018. I've been in Tallahassee since then, since I went to Florida State. Lived there for 3 years postgraduate, and then this fall and summer, kind of decided that I was going to make the move down to South Florida, and I'm going to FAU currently, working on getting my MBA in sport management. So a little bit different for me, but still working with Noles 247 as of now, and still hoping to cover the baseball team from here. It just will be different, and still hoping to do Sunday Golds with Arya, but everything will be a little bit different coverage wise, doing it from here in South Florida. But I still think I'll be able to get up to Tallahassee a good bit during the fall. I think I'll be there next weekend for the Miami game, and hoping to see some scrimmages while I'm there. And then I'll be up there somewhat in the spring as well. So I'll still be around, just not nearly as much as I've been around the last 7 years, and especially in the last few years since I graduated. So yeah, it'll be a bit different, and it's definitely a new mission for me down here. But excited about all of it, and excited about trying out some new things for us for coverage content on both here and Noles 247. I think that we can still do some really good and really exciting things.
First and foremost, Brett, congratulations, man. That's awesome. I know you've been excited about that here for a couple of months, and getting to go down to South Florida and embarking on. It's not really a new career per se, but you're pivoting a little bit, trying to figure some things out to set yourself up for your future in the best way in the world of sports. As far as, like you said, for coverage wise, you and I will continue to keep doing these Sunday Golds. I think that's good news for fans. I think the video aspect allows us to now show you some more things, spreadsheets, videos, things of that nature that enhance our coverage. And though we're not in the same room all the time, we'll still be able to get together and then do this podcast and cover Florida State baseball. Something we both love, and we'll continue to do in the near future. For those of you watching, I apologize. I am battling some kind of bug that's been going on and through Tallahassee over the last month or so. I held off, and now it's finally caught me. I think shake enough hands and touch enough objects, it'll get you. But if I don't sound well, I apologize. But we'll power through it. Brett, there's some things I do want to talk about. I think before fall ball, there's some updates on Noles, right, in the major leagues. And we've got to give a shout out first and foremost to the draft guys and the guys who got their names called. And you and I had a ton of fun being able to support Jamie Arnold and Alex Lodis and at their draft parties, but also a lot of other guys who got opportunities to start their professional careers. Can you give us a quick synopsis of that and what Noles fans need to know about where some of these guys are right now?
Yeah, so obviously a really busy draft for FSU, both on just the guys from last year's rosters front, and then also just from some commits. I think there were 3 commits between high school, JUCO, and the transfer portal, one from each that was drafted. But Jamie ends up going number 11 to the Athletics, signed for a full slot there. There was a really big run on high school shortstops in the top 10 that started with Eli Willits, number 1 overall, which was pretty unexpected. But there was someone in the room at Jamie's draft party that told me a couple minutes before that Willits was going to go number 1. So, and then I think Bremner going 2 was an even bigger surprise. So after that, it was just kind of all the dominoes were falling to certain spots. And then Lodis goes number 60 to the Braves. Cam Leiter, number 65 to the Dodgers. I think Cam got just around slot. I want to say I think he got just above $1.5 million after not throwing this past season. But I think Cam had thrown a bullpen in front of a lot of scouts just before the draft, and I think it did itself well. I think he must have thrown the ball at least good enough. And the Dodgers have a history of drafting arms that are injured and taking them, at a spot where if they were healthy, they wouldn't be there. They did the same thing with Wyatt Crowell. That's working out well for them. He's been really, really good in the minors ever since coming back from injury. Max Williams, Joey Vellini, Drew Farrow, they all go to the Marlins. The Marlins went on a run there. I think 3 or 4 rounds. They took Seminoles in the 3rd, 4th, and 6th. So it was cool to see all those guys go to the same team. Peyton Prescott gets taken by the Mets in the 6th round, despite the Tommy John. And Joey Vellini also goes 5 picks after him. So it was really busy there in rounds, 5, 6. There was a quick run of about 50 or so picks where you had a lot of guys go. And then there was a really quiet period where it felt like, okay, we might get away with everybody else, coming back. But you end up having JC Vanek, a JUCO commit, go in the 14th. Charlie Christensen by the Tigers was in the 14th or 15th, I think, as well. And then you have 4 guys from last year's roster and Evan Kress, Gage Harrelson, Jackson West, and Mason Martinez, who were all drafted between the 15th and 16th round. And all those guys, every single one that was drafted ends up signing. So, I don't think any of them were too big of a surprise from last year's roster. Kress, I thought was potentially going to come back because I think the timeline was going to line up to allow him to pitch while also being able to redshirt from last season. But coming off injury and being offered the money, it's hard not to sign. And then the other surprise for me wasn't necessarily that Gage signed, but just how late Gage went. I said a lot on this podcast throughout the year that I viewed Gage as a 6th to 10th round prospect, and he ended up going in the 16th round. I think that's a really good pick there. Once you get to the 11th round, it doesn't really matter where you go because the money's the same for all those guys. But I was just surprised that someone of his quality and that put the year together that he did ended up that late. But for the most part, I didn't have Christensen being on my radar as a draft guy just because of the numbers at Central Arkansas. And then, Ty Harvey was one that I was kind of leaning from the high school side that he was going to sign. And he ended up doing that for well over slot in the 5th round. But I think, you were able to turn around and pick up a JUCO catcher, at least to help you depth-wise for this year. Obviously, I don't think he has the impact that Harvey would have had long-term. But I think numbers-wise, you're okay at catcher for this year. But Harvey is someone that's really, really talented, and I think someone that would have been a day one impact and a multi-year impact guy for you if you had got him on campus. But overall, I think despite the volume of what you lost to the draft, like for the most part, it was expected and you were prepared for most of those guys to end up hearing their names called and go.
Yeah, just Brett, some background on the Lodis draft slot and where he went. I was over there in St. Johns County, the St. Augustine Jacksonville border. They had a great party over there at a golf club in the clubhouse, and there were some conversations for Lodis to go as high as in the top 30 with the Marlins and into the top 40, no doubt. And I think the way the first 5 or 6 picks of the draft shook out with high school shortstops kind of changed some things and some plans. But Lodis ends up, going at 60 to the Braves. And I think there was some nerves there for Alex, right? Once the pick started getting into the 40s and 50s. And I think, as anybody would be, right, when you've been told you could go anywhere from as high as in the top 30, right? So ultimately you get an incredible situation. And I think that, the team, the success of the team, the franchise, the quality of the franchise, being local in Atlanta, his family, all that, I think it ended up being a blessing in disguise for him. And he got paid pretty well too. So that ended up working out. It was a cool time. I'm really excited for Jackson West to get a shot hearing his name called. I've known that family for a while, and I know Jackson, battling injuries. It wasn't the cleanest finish to his college career that I think he wanted. And I think MLB teams saw that, right? And they know what he's capable of and what the upside is for Jackson, the type of intangibles, character, person that he brings to any franchise, any clubhouse. And he was a really good ball player, I think, for Florida State, and has a chance, I think, to continue to grow in the MLB. So very happy for him. And then, like you said, some of the other guys, were they surprises? Sure, but you and I warned about how you can't make that decision for them. No one knows, financial situations. What's the money offer versus if you come back, what are you going to get? Can Florida State give you NIL a little bit to try and offset some things to help you come back and work with the leverage and the lack of leverage as you get older? But uh, happy for every one of those kids who signed, right? And Gage included, and seeing Vellini really climb up the draft boards. That was something you and I saw coming, right, in the last month or two of the season, and the way he had pitched. So very exciting. I think 2026's draft should have a lot more Noles in it as well. And there will be some high octane. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how excited I am for Jamie to go out there to Vegas and prove that franchise right, for giving him a shot. He should be up there pretty soon, right? I mean, you're seeing Vegas has some guys that they're willing to get up. The Athletics they're making a push, right? They're in Sacramento at the moment, and Kurtz comes up and is balling out, and they're making this push for young guys. So can't wait for that. But that for the draft guys was really good. I was happy overall that you didn't lose a ton of the portal guys like Putnam deciding to, making it to campus, and some other high school guys as well, in addition to the portal guys. But overall, not bad. I think as we decide before we turn the page to fall ball, can we shout out a guy like Parker Messick and a guy like Cal Raleigh, who it's making his debut this season for the Guardians. Wow. I mean, he looks like the ace on Friday nights at Florida State still, just for the Guardians. And the velo has jumped up a little bit too, Brett. It's very cool. Congrats to TJ and Donna and that entire family. I know they've been thrilled, and Park's such a good kid. He represented Florida State so well for so many years. And I think you said it on a pod, right, a few years back. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Park makes it to the big leagues. And to see him have this kind of a splash impact, I want to say that I should be surprised, but I'm not, because that's who Parker Messick has been every time he's picked up a baseball since the second I met him at Florida State.
Yeah, I think that was probably the most locked in I've been for a player's debut in a while. I think it was like a random Wednesday at 4:00. I think, Guardians versus Diamondbacks, and it was just really cool to see Parker pitch the way that we've always seen him pitch. Like there's nothing different about the mannerisms and how he goes about it, how he competes, the person that he is, and the changeup is still the changeup, and he's still. I think the breaking stuff has all taken a tick forward and has allowed him to really refine himself. And the velo, it doesn't have to be in the mid 90s. It's good enough where it is, and he just pitches. And I was looking today. I think the Guardians, since his second start, are 21-6. I don't think it's a super coincidence by that. I think that was a game he started against the Rays that he pitched really well, and I think that was 7 shut. And now the Guardians are in first place of their division after they were, I think, 15 games back at one point and making a crazy push. And I don't think Parker starts today. I think he starts tomorrow, game 3 of this series against the Tigers, which will be a crucial one for them. They play again today, so they'll either be 2 games up on the Tigers or back to tied. So big start for Parker on Thursday. Today, if you're listening to this on Thursday, then today. But it's been really cool to see him go out there and compete, and just watching his debut and watching the reactions from his family. We've gotten to know some of those people through the years, and that was just really cool to see.
Yeah, and I mean, what's impressed me about his starts in Major League Baseball has been that he'll give up some hits, here and there. He'll spray some singles, but his ability to lock in when a guy gets on base and execute his pitches, the fastball, he has really learned how to paint that, and set his off-speed stuff up. And that's been the key to his success, is fastball command and being able to pitch up in the zone with it, inside corner when he needs it. He's had a ton of strikeouts looking at guys who are not expecting a fastball to be 94, 95 from that type of weird, funky angle, and he hides the ball so well. And then that changeup has been as good as it's been since I remember it in college, maybe even a touch better than it was in college. And when he can set that up, you're starting to see a dominant pitcher who I do believe will have a very long Major League Baseball career, Brett.
Yeah, and it's watching these MLB games, it's always interesting. You see something new every day and how the teams prepare for them. That first start against the Diamondbacks, they were literally taking their timeouts after every first pitch in the first inning because they know how fast Parker works, and they were like just trying to get him off. But they just know that from their scouting reports in AAA. And then, I think a couple starts later, his third start was against the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox, it felt like that whole start were kind of just sitting on the changeup and waiting for the changeup. And I think Parker only made it into the third inning that start. And since then, he's done really well. So it's been really cool to see him make adjustments on the fly. I haven't got to see every single start, but you get to go back and watch some of the replays, and it is a lot of changeups still, but there are, like you said, there's a lot of strikeouts looking on the fastball. I think he's got 31 Ks in 34 innings, and most importantly, a 2.08 ERA. I think long term with the WHIP, I think the WHIP's around 1.3, which isn't great, but he just competes and finds a way. I think that's Parker Messick that we all know and love.
Yeah, he's a competitor and he eats up innings, man. He eats up outs. He gets into the sixth, seventh. It's nothing different than what he did at Florida State. He's just now doing it at an even higher level. I hope, Brett, one of these days when he goes and plays the Rays again or the Braves or the Miami Marlins, we'll get a chance to be able to go watch him pitch in person and say hello. Cam Smith update. What's going on there in Houston with Cam? I know he's been in the lineup every day for the most part, but got off to that hot start. I think it cooled off just a touch, if I recall correctly, but been cool to see him. I think if you injected Cam with truth serum, right, and said, do you think that you would have been in Major League Baseball within a year of playing in Omaha, he would have told you no way. And what another cool opportunity for him and a great representative of Florida State baseball.
Yeah, I think Cam at this point has 481 plate appearances on the year. He's hitting 240 with the 679 OPS. So I think that's just below league average right now. League average not very good compared to past years. But like you said, Cam, he's still 22 years old right now. At basically the end of his rookie season, and he was playing a brand new position that he's never played before this whole year that he really picked up at the very end of spring training. And at that position, most of this year he had, I think, an 80th percentile or above, ounce above average. It's a little below that now. But yeah, I think Cam's always someone that at the end of last year, I think, last year in Omaha, Cam was really banged up. I think it was his knees and his back. So, I wonder how this season's kind of taken a toll on him. Like you said, he got off to a really hot start and he's kind of cooled off a little bit in the second half. So, as he gets more used to the wear and tear of an MLB season and the length of it, I think he's just going to get better. And like I said, he's still just 22 years old. So it's a decent rookie year for Cam. And I think, like you said, it's earlier than we even expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean, between him and Parker and Cal Raleigh, you're going to see a bunch of guys potentially in the playoffs, which will be really cool and an awesome opportunity to showcase Florida State's alumni, right, for their baseball program. I know that the Astros are fighting for that wild card spot, and I think the Guardians, because of the hot streak, are in pretty good spot there in their division. And
I was going to say, I think the only way the Astros get in at this point, I think, is if the Red Sox don't get in. So it's a little,
yeah,
like to think of have to cheer for the Red Sox.
Yeah, well, the Tigers right now are in there too, and Tyler Holton's pitching for them. So a lot of opportunities there for Florida State baseball alumni. What do you make of the Cal Raleigh season that he's had? It's been one for the ages. It's been record breaking. I think he's 4 away from setting the AL record for home runs that Judge has at 62. He's at 58 right now as of last check that I looked up. I'm not sure I ever thought Cal would be this good, but I did think he'd be a pretty good MLB catcher. But this has been something, again, legendary, right, of historic proportions in Major League Baseball, the catching position.
Yeah, you're telling me you didn't think that the guy that had just about 30 career homers in 3 years at FSU would have a 58 homer season in the MLB? Come on, Arya. We need to do better. No. I mean, yeah, this is crazy. I don't think anybody would have expected this out of Cal this year, but it's just been going all year long. Like you felt at some point it had to slow down with just the how rapid he hit like 30 homers, and it felt like he got to 40 homers so quick, but it's just kept going. So I guess at this point, what do they have? Four games left at this point, or five maybe? And he's at 58 right now. Already set the switch hitting, the catcher, the Mariners record. So it'll be really interesting to see how the MVP voting goes. Cal's OPS right now is at 945. The OBP at 359. I think he's caught over 120 games so far this year. I don't think the catching metrics are as good this year as they've been in the past, but I think those things fluctuate, pretty aggressively year to year. So, I think for the most part, that Cal's an above average defender behind the plate to go along with 58 homers. Like, I don't know, but Judge is just such a different animal at the plate. So it's hard. I mean, I'll just be really interested to see how the voting goes. I think I would give the edge to the switch hitting catcher. Maybe there's a little bias there because I'm a Red Sox fan, but we'll say we won't say that. But I think that Cal, just being a catcher and hitting that many home runs, driving in that many runs, 121 RBIs, it's crazy to do it at that position as a switch hitter.
I mean, I hear your argument for it. I think that's the fact that it's a catcher probably is what boosts Cal's, I think, case for it. Judge has been ridiculous, right? For the Yankees again. You look at all the different numbers and OPS and things like that. He has been phenomenal, but he's, Cal's playing a premium position that beats up the body every day. And so I totally hear you on that. I haven't quite made up my mind on which way to go on that. It's just I'm a Braves fan, so I can say this without much bias with the Yankees. I mean, Judge is a generational talent. I mean, it's crazy to watch on a daily basis, but I'm with you. I think the case is very strong for Cal because of the fact that he plays catcher.
Yeah, and I think for a long time the WAR was a pretty big separator between Judge and Cal. But looking at the FWAR right now, Judge is at 9.2, Cal's at 8.8. So he's really made up some ground on him in the second half of the year. And I think Judge missed a week or two and missed some time at some point. So that might be why the gap got closed a little bit. But at that point when it's that close and you have the counting stats, I know people don't want to go on the counting stats as much anymore, but it's just really hard to turn a blind eye to that many homers and that much impact at that position where you just don't usually get impact from.
Right. Can we give it a little update on James Tibbs, the third? Mr. Tibbs got traded. It's been a whirlwind of a year for him. I know he got traded to the Red Sox, which made you very happy, and then he got traded away from the Red Sox, which made you very sad. But it feels like he started to figure it out. And you can't argue with being in the Dodgers organization. I think that is all things considered, and I can't say this as a Braves fan, this pains me to say this, but that is arguably the most well-run franchise in baseball is the Dodgers from minor leagues, their development and farm system to how they approach free agency. Obviously, they have a lot of cash to throw at people. Great managing, great players, great fan base. They matter, great market. I don't think ultimately it could have been a better spot for Tibbs. I hope he sticks as a Dodger. But it seems like he's also kind of figured it out over there in their farm system a little bit too, with some of the great coaching that they have as well. But Brett, I'm sure you can give us some more insight there on the Tibbs calendar, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy for James, sad for myself, as a Sox fan, but yeah, I literally had gone to Portland the day before the trade deadline to catch up with James and Jack Anderson, who both were playing for the Sea Dogs at the time. I think Jack's in Worcester right now with the Woo Sox and making some starts actually up in AAA. But I was up there to see both those guys, talk to James a little bit before the game. The next day I drove to the Cape from Portland to go watch Peyton Minka pitch, and right before the game started, I think it was like 15. It was right at the trade deadline, basically. I think it was right after the trade deadline technically passed. It you get the pass-in notification that Tibbs was traded, or really the notification that May was traded to the Red Sox, and an hour later, notification that Tibbs was one of the prospects going back to the Dodgers. For context, Dustin May is no longer pitching for the Red Sox right now, and he was a half a year rental. So great move to trade a first rounder for that, but we're going to move past that. But it was just a really weird year for James. Right when he got traded to the Red Sox was right when he was getting really hot for the Giants organization. And then the Red Sox organization is really driveline driven, both on the mound and offensively. And I think it works for some guys. It doesn't work for other guys. It's worked for a guy like Roman Anthony. But James with the Giants organization, 857 OPS, with the Sea Dogs for 30 games was a 586 OPS. And then after the trade to the Dodgers, he put up a 900 OPS in Tulsa in 36 games there. So ultimately an 802 OPS on the year for James, which is a good year. When you move around that much, not just from level to level, but within 3 organizations, that's got to be really tough on a human. So, I think overall at this point, James is in a good spot for himself in an organization that is always going to produce winners. And he's on the same team as Wyatt Crowell now as well, who is throwing the ball really, really well this year.
I love to hear that for Wyatt, man. That's a good kid who, had a tough time in Tallahassee with the injuries. And that's someone you and I have a lot of belief in terms of the ability and what that ultimately will look like. You and I saw some numbers right on Tibbs, some advanced stats, some bat to ball metrics, and even during some of his struggles, he was still producing really positive numbers in certain areas. And I'm glad to see it come to fruition for him. And sometimes, Brett, those things are as easy as, finding a spot you can be in long term and not having to keep moving around and have different ideologies and coaching and different systems and all the different things that go into what people are trying to put into your brain to make you the best version of yourself. So some consistency for him has been good. I pray that he continues to stay, in one organization and that he continues that rise, because it would be pretty epic to see James Tibbs as a Dodger. I would hate that for my Braves, but that's someone I'll be rooting for the rest of my life. So good to see that there. Shout out, by the way, I don't know if people know, his sister Mary Grace is now a Florida State lacrosse player. She transferred from VCU to Florida State, so she'll be on the inaugural lacrosse team at FSU, and the Tibbs family's reign continues in Tallahassee. So those of you who are big fans of that family and following that family, it continues on. Brett, before we wrap up on MLB thoughts, is there any last notes that you want to touch on from the league, former Noles, draft stuff, things of that nature, maybe any off-season acquisitions by Florida State in the portal that caught your eye before we talk purely fall ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think late in the cycle, obviously we talked about some of these guys before the draft, but after the draft, and you had a chance there to get Gage back. It felt like getting into the back end of the draft, but then he ends up going and signing, which you want him to do. So you needed to go out and kind of replace him at that point. And I think they hadn't at that point because they felt like there was a chance he might come back. But then you really needed to go out and push for an impact bat in the outfield because it felt a little thin there if you weren't going to do that. And you did a really good job of adding someone late in Braden Dowd. I got to see Dowd somewhat. I think I watched him play in 3 games in the Cape this summer, and the Cape numbers weren't great for Dowd. But talking to him up there when he was going through the portal process, he was literally like on the off days in the Cape, would get up at 6 in the morning and fly out of Logan in Boston and go do his visit that day and fly back to the 6 a.m. the next day and go back to his games in the Cape. So, he was really dedicated to his Cape team, but at the same time was trying to get through that portal process. So I think the summer was kind of tough on him, and the numbers don't reflect the player that he is. If you go look at the numbers at USC, I think that really reflects the player that he is. It's a really quality bat. It's a good outfielder defensively that could play all three spots. Gets on base at a high rate, doesn't strike out at a high rate. And the power production really went up this past year. As a freshman, only had 1 homer I believe, and then this past year had 10. I think that could climb a little bit. I don't think he's a super power guy. Like, that's not the profile there. I think the profile is like he's going to give you good at bats. He's going to get on base and consistently put the barrel to the baseball. But with the right field porch in Hauser, you always feel like you can get a couple extra out of some left-handed bats. So already building off of 10, you feel like maybe you get a couple more there next year. But overall, it's just, and the other thing I felt like they didn't have was a pure leadoff hitter. I know we really love Chase Williams and what he does, but Chase has said publicly like he doesn't feel like he's a leadoff hitter. He doesn't want to hit leadoff. I think if they felt like he was a leadoff hitter, we would have seen him do more of that last year. I still think Chase is probably going to be more so in the spots he was last year, somewhere from 5 to 7, kind of restarting the order. And I think Dowd is the one that is your leadoff hitter that really starts things for you and gets on base like Gage did last year.
100%. I love the Dowd pickup. I'm a big fan of college production. If they've done it at a Power Four level, I trust it. I trust what college baseball is and what those numbers tell me about the type of at bat you're going to get. And Dowd checks so many different boxes, and he runs really well in the outfield. He's a burner and can really run out there. Love the Purcell ad. Was a big fan of that. Stokes, obviously, the flamethrower from Oregon. A lot of West Coast flavor for Florida State coming to Tallahassee. My last note on the draft stuff, I thought it was a major win to get Kelvin Paulino Jr. And John Stutzer to get campus. I know those were names that if they were maybe a touch more signable, might have gone in the draft. And I think ultimately, yeah, it stinks to lose Ty Harvey, and that's a guy who would have played every day for you. But Paulino and Stutzer have a shot to get in there early and give you a chance. And I'm a big believer in what Paulino's bat is. Very polished, very advanced for his age. So I would not be surprised to see him getting DH opportunities. And that's someone in the fall that I'm really excited about. So I feel like that's a good transition, Brett, into talking fall ball, and your thoughts on the macro 30,000 feet view of where Florida State's program is. What updates do you got for us as we start the fall portion, which to me, to you and me, and I think a lot of, the diehard Florida State baseball fans, this is almost as fun for us to kind of monitor as is the regular season.
Yeah, I love this time of year. I think, at this time of year, like Link said yesterday, you're not really trying to figure out where guys are going to be in the lineup, what roles they're going to have. You're just trying to figure out what guys are. You're just trying to evaluate players. You're just trying to see guys take as many live at bats as possible, get as many reps as possible, get as many pitches in safely as you can while showing the stuff that you have in short stints. I really enjoy this time of year. I'll be sad not to be there for every scrimmage like I've been in the past. It's kind of hit me in the last couple of days that I won't be there for the first few scrimmages, and trying not to be too sad about it. But I think I'll be able to.
We joked that I'm going to FaceTime you,
Yeah,
and set up the camera.
yeah, I know. It's just, but it's a super important time of year that nobody really gets to see too much of, except people like ourselves. Like I've gotten to see every pitch pretty much the last few years being at fall ball, and it's really where you start to feel like you start to get an understanding of what the team could be. You start to believe in what certain players could be, and then I think when you get to the preseason, that's when you really start to know, and that's when you know what roles that guys are going to have and how they're going to fit into all this. But right now, it's just let guys go play, evaluate, and then after that, once you get to the winter, then you're starting to put the puzzle pieces together. But right now, it's just about getting reps and figuring out what you have exactly.
A batting cage that's being enclosed. That was something you had alluded to in previous episodes, and Link has touched on wanting to do it. Can you give us an update on what they're trying to do with the batting cage and how that positively impacts Florida State baseball?
Yeah, anytime we've asked Link about facilities since he's arrived at FSU, that's been one of the first things he said. He's always mentioned he wants to get that batting cage enclosed, and it kind of is important in Florida where you have inclement weather and the heat to have some AC and to protect your expensive equipment that's in there, like a pitching lab and all the there's thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment in that cage. So to get it enclosed, you're going to be able to protect it from inclement weather, you're going to be able to get AC in there, which I think Link said that the AC will be running by the end of the week. I think that's what he said yesterday. I don't know exactly when the whole building and the enclosement of it will be done, but that is underway. I think Chris Nee tweeted a picture of it yesterday on Twitter. I quote tweeted it as well if you want to see some of the progress they've made on it. But yeah, that is something that is getting done, something that Link has wanted done for a while, and it's they're really, really focused on player development. That's when it comes to facilities, that's what they're focused on right now. They're focused on getting the player development stuff to be in as tip top shape as it could be. And having AC in your batting cages kind of goes a long way in the state of Florida. And being able to protect that equipment in there that's really expensive and also really sensitive is important.
Yeah, I think there are things that FSU's facilities need um, prior to even talking about stadium renovations or new stadiums and things of that nature and the fan experience. And that has been on, athletic director Alford's wish list, right? Alongside Link and Randy Burdett and all the different guys that go into trying to figure those things out. First and foremost, you got to take care of the players, right? I think you want to get them the batting cages that work, like you said, that work in the 21st century. And you would like to have a lounge area for the guys where you focus on the players first, and then you can start talking about fan experience and overall stadium experience. But that's a huge deal for us, I think, to be able to have those batting cages enclosed. And I'll definitely hopefully check them out by the end of next week and go see what they look like. But Brett, as we talk the fall and the 2026 roster, this is our first glimpse, right, of what the makings are. Can you give me, going into fall, where you're most confident in this team and the, I should say, in the personnel of this team, and what gives you the most question marks that you're trying to figure out prior to preseason of 2026?
I do feel like they built up a lot of really good depth on the mound this off season. How that ends up playing and what that ends up looking like, we don't know exactly, and I don't think you have as much proven on the front end this year going back into it quite as much. Pretty much just because you don't have Jamie Arnold coming back, and he was kind of projected number one potential pick going into the season last year, and preseason pitcher of the year. But outside of that, top to bottom, I think you've upgraded. You brought in a lot of guys that threw a lot of innings last year, which I think was a little bit of a different approach this year in the portal. Was go out and get some more volume and some more experience. You added a lot of right-handers. 5 right-handed pitchers from the Division I portal alone. 4 right now. Gabe Nard is someone who will show up in January after finishing his degree at Duke this fall. But I mean, you add a bona fide frontline starter in Trey Beard, like D1 Baseball rated him the number one pitcher from the portal. I mean, if you're equating that to the transfer portal for football, I mean, it's a 5-star type guy. Like, it's a top 5 player in the portal, and you got him, and he's gonna lead your staff alongside Wes Mendez. How that ends up looking between Friday, Saturday, I don't think either of those guys really care. Wes said that yesterday himself, but those are 2 guys that I think Beard at this point is a little more proven with the numbers. He'll take a step up in competition, but just with the angle that he presents, the uncomfortable angle, the changeup that he has, he's going to miss bats and pitch at a high level. And I expect Wes to take that next step. I think he really locked in on the secondary stuff this offseason, this summer, just focusing on that. I'm really excited to see what Wes looks like coming back here. So I just think top to bottom, you have a lot of talent here, and you have a lot of proven talent too with guys like Gabe Nard. Like, he's thrown in the ACC for 3 years, and I think it was around a 4.5 ERA this year, which isn't exactly great, but like for the career, it's a 3.5, I think, around there. So I mean, that's quality innings, a lot of quality innings. Brody Purcell threw a lot of quality innings at USC last year. Bryson Moore hasn't been able to stay healthy in 2 years at Virginia, but the innings that he has thrown have been good innings. Cole Stokes is kind of from the Gavin Adams archetype, where it's a flamethrower and sometimes doesn't know where the ball is going, but a ton of swing and miss. So I'm excited to get back and see these arms and see what they can do. Concern wise, I do think they have a pretty decent position player group, a good position player group. One of my concerns is left-handed hitting depth. Obviously, you have Miles at the top of that. Chase Williams, I believe, will switch hit when he comes back from injury. He won't play this fall, but he'll be one of your left-handed bats because he'll at least hit left-handed. Great Gabe Frazier, the Arkansas transfer. After that, your lefth-handed bats are Jace Estes and then freshman Mookie Rodriguez and Charlie Buckles. This was something a couple years ago, I think Link's first year, where they didn't have many left-handed bats, where it felt really unbalanced and uncomfortable at times. I just think after your top three left-handed hitters, do you have enough impact and depth behind those guys? If one of those guys were to go down, are you going to get really, really right-handed heavy sometimes and see a lot of right-handed arms in ACC play and later in the season? But that's probably just nitpicking right now. I do think they did a really good job of filling out this roster throughout the summer with portal ads. Like I said, Dowd was somebody they needed. It felt very specific, and it was a good get. Putnam, their other Putnam and Frazier were both needs as well. You needed a physical bat. Putnam is that, and Frazier, we'll see what he looks like up the middle, but you needed a talented middle infielder. I think you got that with Frazier. I don't know what it will end up looking like come day one, but I do think you got some talent there. I mean, you play 20 or so games as a true freshman at Arkansas. You have to be talented. So overall, I think they did a pretty good job this offseason.
Yeah, I think when you look at the mixture between Putnam and Beard and Purcell and Dowd and Stokes, you got guys that have done it at a decently high level, and I think those are plug and plays immediately that you're not too worried about. And then you have some upside guys, right? Like the Frazier, that he's done it on big weekends in the SEC, but can he do it for a full season? We'll have to see how that turns out for the Noles. Cato Leary is another one to me, that high upside guy. If you can get him to click, then that's going to be really good for you. But it's a good mix. And I think with the returners and you're hoping a guy like Miles, continues to on his trajectory and the arc that he's on in his career, and Carnes, who tore up the summer in the Cape and is poised to be a first-round pick next year. A guy like Cal Fisher, who's I think your prototype for college baseball, right? Veteran who's gotten a bigger role each and every year that he's been at the institution that he's at, and so on and so forth, for this to be a really good roster, Brett. I do think this has a shot to mesh. They do have to get it to mesh. And your note here about 50% newcomers and just the number of new faces, that does provide a concern sometimes, but that is the portal era. That is the era we're in, where every team has a 1-year lifespan, and you got to get the most out of it in that 365 days that you have with them.
Yeah, as I was looking through stuff recently and going through the roster more and more, I realized that Ben Barrett's actually he's the only guy from Link's first year that remains on roster. And then Cal Fisher and Brody DeLongmuir they'll both be the first guys to make it to a third year at FSU. And Brody obviously didn't play his freshman year because he redshirted due to injury. But so he's really the first guy to make it to year 3 under Link development wise. And we've seen how they develop hitters. They're proven at this point, not just in the numbers, but also in the draft and how they develop those guys. So I think that'll be really key for this offensive group. But if they can do what they've done in the past and even just get an average of the development that they've gotten and increase in production, that I think that the returning group that you have offensively could be pretty good for you.
Yeah, I think that's a good synopsis of some of the portal guys and some of the newcomers. Is there a rookie that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Paulino earlier being a really good win from the draft. I think Paulino is someone that can show up day one and can hit at the college level. I've always been told by scouts and evaluators that he can just really mash, and he's going to show up day one and push to at least be in the starting lineup as a DH. I think it may take some time for the defense to come, most likely specifically at third base. I think that's where he fits in, just profile wise, that makes the most sense, I think. But I think the power is for real. I think there's some hitability in there. There may be some swing and miss as a freshman, but I think he's a guy that could potentially push for a DH role. And then Stetzer, like you mentioned as well, like Stetzer if he even could just be close to average as a freshman bat, he's going to push to start in the outfield, I think, just because of the athletic profile. Just super, super athlete that is going to be able to range in the outfield. And we know how Link likes to put those outfield, how he likes to put his athletes in the outfield. So I think if Stetzer can show up and be, at least serviceable at the plate from day one as a true freshman, that the athletic profile is going to give him a chance to be a day one type of guy.
I'm only projecting possibilities here, Brett, but can you imagine an outfield at some point, even if it's just for a couple innings late in the game, of like Stutzer, Dowd, and Williams, those three, and the amount of coverage you have gap to gap. I'm thinking about that and going, that's the type of outfield I think Link has been hoping to have at some point, to be able to run the horses out of the stable, so to speak.
What about throwing a wide receiver in that mix as well?
Oh, a little BJ Gibson action, yeah.
But
He's been
yeah,
a
I
much
mean, I
better
think
football player than I thought. I got to give that kid some credit. He's a much better football player, uh, and I think with Gus's offense, they have found ways to get BJ Gibson more involved, and there's some upside there. There was a time where I thought his best future was in baseball. I still think that. I think if he dedicates himself to baseball, he's got a shot to skyrocket in that sport. But football's good. He's a heck of an athlete, man, and
yeah,
there's some ball skills there at receiver for him too. So, yeah, man,
like
you
you
got
mentioned, I think that, like you said, like that Stetzer, Williams, and Dowd in the outfield, like that's a really, really exciting athletic mix right there. And I think Brody is someone that's going to continue to get more athletic as well. I think just being healthy, the longer that Brody is healthier, the more athletic he's going to get. There was just a long period of time where Brody was banged up and dealing with multiple injuries. And I really like the way that he swung it in the Cape too. So I think, he's still someone that, and like I said, he's going to be in that third year of development with Link, which we haven't seen much. And they're proven in that development. So I'm excited to see what Brody's bat looks like as well coming back this year.
Yeah, I do want to put it on the record that I think Brody's going to get a lot of at bats this year. I think it's a pure
Yeah.
hitter. I was projecting a seventh inning through ninth inning. FSU's up
Yeah.
1 or 2, and it's
Mhm.
do not let the ball touch the grass, boys. You get
Yeah.
those three guys out there and their vacuums. I do think I want to put out there, Brett, because we've gotten questions not just on social media, but I've been getting text messages and a couple of emails about Deuce Robinson's availability as a baseball player. Yes, he's a pretty good ball player, and he's got natural ability. The problem is, and it's a good problem to have, he's really good at football, and this is a draft year for him. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for him that he has the season that he wants on the gridiron, on the football field in Doak, and that once baseball season comes around, he's going to be too busy prepping for the NFL draft, the combine, pro day. That takes a lot of time, right? You've got to you got to fly to different cities to train for that. And I'm sure he's from Arizona, so I'm sure he would go back to some of those facilities in Arizona that do a good job of training guys up for the draft. So I think that's ultimately what keeps Deuce from playing baseball is the legitimate future in football that he has. So I did want to put that out there. I have no inside knowledge of it at all. I just think common sense and from what I have heard would say that you're hoping Deuce has the season that he would like to have on the football side of things and takes that next step of his professional career there.
Yeah, I think best case scenario for Deuce is you're getting ready for the NFL draft, like you said. Um, I don't remember how much baseball was involved last year when he was in the portal. I don't think they were very involved just because he wasn't going to be eligible this past season for baseball, transferring mid-year. Um, but they've shown willingness to bring those guys on before with BJ this past year. I know Cam Davis and Camden Fryer didn't end up making that move. Camden was pretty badly injured though. And then Cam just hadn't played baseball in a really long time. He hadn't really, I don't think he had even played his junior season of baseball. So they have shown the willingness to do it in the past. But yeah, I agree that I think Deuce will be getting ready for pro football.
We talked Brody DeLamielleure. I think that's a good segue into returners that we think could take that next step forward for Florida State. I think DeLamielleure is squarely in that conversation. Obviously, a guy like Hunter Carnes is in that conversation. and a guy on the mound, two guys like a Mendez and a Manka. I think that's where that pool starts of guys you're ready to see take the next step in their careers.
Yeah, it's a really small returning group of arms, but you still do return 37%, just mostly because of Mendez throwing 78 innings last year. Returned 44% of your plate appearances from last year. Obviously, most of those coming from Miles and Cal Fisher, and then Chase Williams and Brody also got 100 plus at bats. I watched Manka in the Cape this summer. I think I got 3 starts worth, maybe only 2. I think 3, and all 3 I thought he was really good, and I was really impressed. And there is some Joey Vellini in there. I think there's a higher ceiling potentially. I don't think I don't think that Peyton's as refined right now, but I do think there's room for the breaking balls to take a step forward. I think there's room for the pitchability to take a step forward. But like the more and more he pitched in the summer, and the more he got in routine and was making a start every 7 days, every 6 days, and was just going out there and competing, like he looked really, really good. He looked really in control of things. The fastball has always played up. Like it's only really 91, 92, but guys just don't square it up. You just don't see hitters square up Peyton's fastball very often, especially with the wood bats on the Cape. Um, you just saw a lot of pop-ups on the fastball, and I just was really impressed with the way that he competed, and I think he's someone that could push for a potential starting role this year. But like I said, with Mendez and Beard, you're probably already going to have 2 left-handed pitchers. You did that this past year. Are you willing to do it again this upcoming year? That's something that we'll have to follow throughout the year. But yeah, only 17 returning players, 10 position players, 7 pitchers. It's kind of just how it goes now. It's really how it is every year.
When you think of a guy like Carnes, and what that upside talent looks like, it seemed like he put it together in that final weekend, didn't it? Against Oregon State, you could see the type of bat that he is, really in the postseason altogether. And then in the summer, he was one of the best players in the Cape. So that's a guy that a lot of scouts have been high on for a couple of years. I know, Brett, you've been mentioning that you think Carnes has all ACC, all American type and first round potential. I do think, fair or unfair, the Noles are expecting a big jump from him, and they're going to need it if that lineup is going to be as good as it can be.
Yeah, each of these last 2 years with Link, we've seen one guy take an extreme jump in production. The first year was Cam. This past year it was Alex. I think Carnes is your candidate to do that this year. Miles would be that if he hadn't done what he did at the end of the year. But I feel like Miles. I think the WRC plus ended up being around 150 with OPS over 1,000. It'd be hard to even make a technical extreme jump. So I feel like Carnes is the one that has that potential here. He was in the Cape for a really short amount of time, but it was really impressive, the numbers he put up while he was there. I wasn't able to catch him in the window that he was there, but between that and what he did at Oregon State, I thought him and Miles were FSU's best bats at Oregon State. Just like the consistent at bats. I think Carnes only played in 2 of those games, but every single swing felt like a good swing, and it felt like an impactful swing and a barrel, and it felt like he got back to using all parts of the field. I don't know how many times I mentioned last year that I felt like he got away from his strength, which is just driving the ball all over the place. Like I think 4 of the 5 homers hit last fall were to the opposite field, and then that wasn't really part of his game for most of the year last year. And that same exact thing happened with Cam freshman year. And then when he got back to spraying the ball oppo sophomore year, it was like it all clicked again. And he was just able to hit everything because of that. When you're not pulling off your front side and just rolling over ground balls to the left side of the infield every time, and you're actually staying on your backside and driving through balls and powering fastballs the other way, and he has the strength to power fastballs the other way, like easily flick it over the right field fence. So I think the sky's the limit for Carnes. I still believe he's a guy that's going to push for the first round this year. Him and Miles are both sophomore draft eligible. I think you've got 4 guys this year that could potentially push for the first round between Carnes, Miles, Wes, and Trey Beard. I think all those guys are candidates. I don't know if any of them are in rankings to be right now. Like, I don't know if you go to find a top 30 for the 2026 draft and see them in there, but I fully believe that all four of those guys have the potential to be that.
I've seen some lists that have Carnes, multiple lists that have Carnes in the top 10, top 15, and one had Miles Bailey in the first round. But
It's
you know,
weird to me that more don't have Miles. Like, I don't get that.
I
I
wonder if
get
he missed the 76 strikeouts, but to me, the draft, and you and I were talking about this not on the recording off record, but about about how the draft took 4 first rounders at first base just a couple of years ago. Like they've shown they want first baseman. Miles fits that mold, power hitting first baseman with feel for the barrel.
it's no doubt going to be the number one power tool in the class. Like, there's just it's an 80. Like, you just don't find that. And it's been weird to see some of these lists and like his name's not on there. And I don't expect him to be top 10. It's just weird to me that he's not at least like 30 or something like that. Maybe it's just because I expected, no doubt, he would be on there. But after the way last season ended, like, it's just hard to imagine him hitting less than like 25 homers this year. It just felt like to me that second half of the year, he realized how strong and how good he was, and that if he was just aggressive on pitches inside the zone, that he was going to be able to do this damage at a consistent rate.
Yeah, I think you could break his season up into first half and second half and really see the numbers jump in that second half. Maybe Brett, for one of our other episodes, now that we have these snazzy tools, you can create a chart that shows his first and second half splits when we talk about Miles, which we will undoubtedly do in a future episode. Can I throw a name out there that it's not that? It's not that much of a risk. I do think a guy like Chase Williams can take that next step from what he was, only because he was hurt for much of the year this year, and really I think he showed you in the postseason what he's capable of in terms of the spark plug. And he was playing with one shoulder essentially, right? And he's playing from one side of the plate, and this is a kid that to me could hit 350, 375 in college and steal 40 bases and be one of the best overall. I think spark plugs in the game. Just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I mean, Chase did what he did in 114 at bats, while only hitting left-handed when he's used to switch hitting, and only hitting with one shoulder when he's used to hitting with two. And I know there would be a lot of those swings where people would be like, "What is he doing?" That was just him trying to survive and battle through the at bats. I think the thing that you'll see come down a bit, with health is the strikeouts. As long as as the more he puts the ball in play, the more his average is going to go up because of that speed, and the more impact you're going to get because you're going to get more doubles and more triples. And the biggest surprise for me last year with Chase was the power. Like, I just didn't see that coming. He hit a couple of balls, ended up hitting 2 home runs, but there were a couple other balls hit off the top of the fence at Hauser, I think. Like, there were some really impactful swings that I don't think we had really seen from Chase before. But you see Chase, like, he is a really strong kid. Like, just it's probably like 0% body fat with Chase. Like, it's all muscle when you see him. And maybe only having the one shoulder was keeping him a little bit tighter on some swings, so he was getting a little bit more impactful. But maybe that translates over. I think he only had 1 homer in the JUCO season the year before, and there was another one that was, I think, an inside the park homer. So yeah, Chase is definitely someone that's capable of taking another step. And I know there were some times that it looked awkward in left field for Chase. I believe that in center, he's much better. Like, I feel like he's much more natural in center. I think most people think that center is harder because there's more ground to cover, but to me, center is just, you're more so just going and being an athlete. There's not as much. I don't think you have to. I think you're just more natural. You just go out there and run, and that's what Chase wants to do. And he's really, really good at it. So yeah, I definitely think he will not participate this fall though competitively. He got his shoulder cleaned up this summer. I think a lot of this is similar to Reese Albert's 2019 when he ended up playing through the shoulder injury and then getting it cleaned up. And then I think he missed that fall before the COVID season. So yeah, but I think, Link didn't give an exact timeline yesterday. He said he was back to bunting right now, and he was doing stuff like throwing and running. He just isn't back to swinging yet, and won't be able to play competitively throughout this fall.
Yeah, it's a good update. I also want to just point out the angle from center field is different, right? From what you see in left. Your reads, some people have a much easier time with the way the ball comes off the bat and the angle you're at in center field than in left, especially if you're not used to it. Left field at times, it can really throw you off, especially with not having as much space either to recover and try and figure out where you are on your path to the ball. So um, on
Biggest
the
thing for Chase
mhm,
this year will be just figuring out how to keep it all in control and stay healthy
yeah.
and try to run into the wall a little less. And those are the things we love about Chase, but it's also the reason we want to see Chase on the field all year. And Link's talked about that in the past. So just trying to find a way to get through the whole season a little bit better and kind of maintain rather than dealing with all that wear and tear he had to deal with last year.
Can I give you his pitching counterpart? Someone who I think is kind of similar to the Chase Williams in terms of saw it for flashes, think that it could be all put together. And he's an older guy. To me, it's John Abraham. I really believe that Johnny A, you saw it in flashes of what he is capable of doing. And I know he's going to get a shot to hopefully be in the rotation this year and have his chance to be in that. And you talked about the two lefties, right? That you're expecting with Beard and Mendez. And between Abraham and Manka and Purcell, I think you've got a shot there to find someone to take that third spot. But Abraham, to me, is one who's pitched now at the college level for a few years, has pitched at Florida State, knows what Posey wants, and I think his skill set might actually end up being better as a starter if he can just completely hone it in with the consistency. But that's, to me, you talk about returners that can take the next step on the mound. For me, I think Johnny A has a shot.
Yeah, definitely. I think that group of guys aiming to be starters, whether that be a third starter or a midweek starter, like that's going to be a big group, and I think they're going to really give a lot of guys an opportunity to try to start. And John's going to be in that group and be one of the top ones in that group, and um, it's something that John wants to do. I know it's something that he strives for, and really he has the repertoire to do it when he's commanding it and is consistent. That's just the thing for John, is just being consistent and consistently putting the ball in the strike zone where you want to put it in the strike zone. But when you have that four pitch mix consistently with the fastball, the knuckle curve, the I can't remember if it was the slider or cutter by end of year last year, but kind of whichever one of those two, kind of in between, and the changeup, like it's capable of going out there and eating up innings. We've seen him at times. It's felt like he's at his best when he's in these extended relief roles, going 3, 4, 5 innings, and that's allowed him to kind of settle in rather than gassing it out for one inning and really letting it eat. So maybe extending it out and letting him kind of get into more of a routine allows you to find that consistency and allow the stuff to play the way we've felt like it can play for a really long time.
And I can't recall 100%, Brett, so fact check me if I'm wrong. Did he start against Florida in Jacksonville at the baseball grounds?
Yeah, I think that was the one he started last year. He definitely started at least one of them, and it went well.
And it looked good. Like he was pitching to contact, was in the zone. I'd have to pull it up, the box score, but I
Most of
recall
them
maybe
at the
it was
moment.
the Florida game in Jacksonville that I thought as a starter it looked really good and under control. And I think I made a comment to him after the game. I remember saying, good job, man. Like that's what it's supposed to look like. But um, anything we need to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes, I think. But anything from Link's presser that you want to touch on that caught your eye? I know Miles Bailey, the outfielder, was something that I heard those guys talk about. I don't know if I love it. I'm just gonna say I don't mind saying that on record. I think he's really good at first base. I think it's a premium position to play first base at a high level. Yeah, you can stick anybody at first base, and it fits a lot of different people. But to me, to be really good at it, there are few and far between. And to me, Miles was taking that step to be an elite defensive first baseman. So uh, I don't know. I'll throw that to you. But anything else that you heard from the press conferences that caught your eye?
Yeah, to me that's really a player in his draft year, just trying to show as much value as they can show, and I don't think they'll do it much, and I think they'll only do it when it makes sense. But at the end of the day, Miles is the only primary first baseman on this roster, and he's a good first baseman, and he's getting better at it, I think, defensively day by day. Like we saw that last year within the season. It felt like he got better and better and more comfortable every game. So I just think that's one of those cases where in guys draft year, they're going to try to do as much as they can to show the value. Like Cal Fisher playing short as much as he did on the Cape, and I'm sure you'll see him and a bunch, and probably all these infielders will play short, second, and third throughout the fall. But ultimately, like same with Cal, like I think Cal will stick at third, and I just think Miles will be your first baseman. And Link even said in the press conference, it's different this year. We have our corners coming back, and our corners basically was saying that the corners are set and they're trying to figure out the middle infield, which was completely different than last year where you lost your corners in Cantu and Cam, and you were trying to, and you brought back your middle infield with Alex and Drew. So, I still think those are going to be your two corner guys almost every single day. Um, and I thought the thing that stuck out to me the most was from Link's presser was just how excited he was about it. Link doesn't usually sugarcoat things in a good way or a bad way. Like he pretty much just tells you exactly what he's seeing and exactly what he's feeling and exactly what he's evaluating to this point. And, like I said, I think he believes as well that they did a really good job this offseason with the portal and filling needs that they had and going out and getting just good players. I think they just did a really good job of just getting a lot of good players. I think one thing that stood out, he mentioned Putnam is working really hard on second base. That has been where it felt like he fits in the best just with the group that you have right now. I think Putnam wants to play on the left side of the infield between short and third, but it probably fits best at second base. And really the profile might be its very best at first base. But and Link also mentioned that he was really physical, and that was good to hear, and good to hear he's driving the ball out to all parts of the field. There was a lot of positive talk around Ben Barrett, and Ben also spoke yesterday, and he mentioned that he went up to Tread in Charlotte for this entire summer and literally just went there to work on his command, and that's all he did the entire summer and threw 2 bullpens a week working on his command. So I'm really intrigued to see what that looks like coming back, because we know what the stuff looks like. It's just the issue for Ben last year was it was either a big miss in the zone or it was a big miss outside of the zone, which ends up being completely uncompetitive because when you're missing big in the zone, you're going to get hit hard. And when you're missing big outside of the zone, those are just uncompetitive pitches that you're not going to get guys to swing at. So if you can get Ben to have small misses both outside and within the zone, I think you can get a lot more out of him. There's a lot more value in that arm than what you've got to this point. So yeah, there was a lot in there from Link's presser. It was 19 minutes, I think. Yeah, I put the whole transcript on 247 from yesterday, and I'm working right now on an article about all the notes from yesterday as well. So yeah, we'll have it fully covered from West Palm Beach.
Love it, man. We got some scrimmages coming up, inter squad, and then I believe they've got a matchup against UAB in Tallahassee, and then they've got a matchup against Mississippi State in Pensacola. And I think they're working on a really cool all-star game with some former Noles and some current MLBers to come back, and that might end up being an epic Halloween weekend in Tallahassee. I think there's a football game as well that weekend. Could be the makings of a pretty special weekend at Hauser and at Doak. So I know you and I are going to try and make all those scrimmages if we can. The Pensacola one for me is the same day as FSU Stanford for football. But luckily, I believe I'm doing that one from home, studioing remotely. So there's a chance there with a 10:30 kickoff for Eastern time for football that I can make it to Pensacola and back without a problem. So I can do a double dip that day. But I know the 26 schedule is coming out at some point here soon. You've started to see some teams releasing theirs. Florida State's finalizing some. I won't give away things that haven't already been put out, but I think they've already announced the tournament in Texas, right? Again in Arlington in that college classic. Who they're playing, I think, comes out here pretty shortly too, with times and days. The only Easter eggs I'll say are the final two series are epic of the season, and the Atlanta area Noles should be ready to have a good time for one of the weekends. So that could be a lot of fun. That'll come out here shortly.
Playing at Kennesaw State to end the year?
I can't tell you which school. All I know, I'm not even guaranteeing you that it's a series. I'm just letting you know, Atlanta Noles, you're going to get a chance to see your boys this year up there. So it's a special city for both of us to be able to go up to, and yeah. So anyway, that'll come out here. That'll come out here shortly. I think the overall schedule in the next couple of weeks. So, is there anything else, Brett, you want to touch on? Anything that I missed? I know we'll get back on here and have another pod shortly.
No, I think we're good. Covered a lot.
Yeah, over an hour and 10 minutes. So, Brett, a new norm for Sunday Golds.
I was just gonna say I was just gonna post these on my YouTube channel, which is just Brett Nevitt. Actually, what is mine? That'd be good to know what my YouTube name is. I think it's technically Brett Nevitt Baseball Videos. But if you just look up my name or Sunday Golds, you'll probably be able to find it too.
Cool. Like, subscribe. You can watch Sunday Golds now. That was something a lot of people had asked, and now you got us on video. For better or for worse. Be careful what you ask for.
For real.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody watching, to everybody listening, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and all the different ways you can watch and listen to Sunday Golds. We'll be back pretty soon here, I think next week, maybe, or the week after, and talk a little bit more about fall baseball. I'm going to enjoy football season right now. I'm nervous about the Virginia game on Friday in Charlottesville, and hoping for the best. But Brett, oh man, I don't know. I've been waffling with. I feel if I say it out loud, I'm going to jinx it.
We did OTB today, and they had some big wins for the Noles, so I had to go close. I don't feel like it's going to be too big. Friday night on the road scares me.
I think my boss over at Legends and the Seminole Sports Network, Jeff Colhane, will want me not to predict scores as an official radio member of the team. But Brett, we'll go with yours.
I had 35-31 Noles.
I would take a 1-point victory. How does that sound? Let's just get out of there. Let's get out of there, and let's get Noles and Canes at a different level than we've seen it in recent memory for that rivalry. But all right, man, Brett, I'll let you go. Thanks for hopping on here. Those of you, appreciate you listening and tuning in. For Brett Nevitt, I'm Mario Masudi. This has been Sunday Golds.